Hey you guys, so I said this video would be out in like 2 days from the last homeschool Q&A and you get part 2, but then we got sick with like the 1000th illness of this never-ending winter. I know you guys, so many of you know the feeling. So I'm coming at you because I'm having a rest day and I've got nothing else to do, so I'm just gonna film this now. And I really thought I was gonna miss it. All my kids got it kind of one by one, and then I went down yesterday. So I'm feeling a lot better despite my appearance, but I thought I would just sit down and baby's napping and finish banging out these questions for you guys, and then we will move on to regular content. I will apologize. I'm in the middle of kind of figuring out how I want to post. I'm trying to find my style again. It's ever evolving, right? And I just want to figure out how I want to vlog. If you guys don't see something from me like right away, I don't think there'll be a gap, but if there is, just know it's just because I'm trying to figure out what I want to film, and depending on how quickly everybody gets better, how fast I get better. I don't know, I might want to do some pre-filming and stuff. So anyway, let's get into this homeschool big giant Q&A that I've been meaning to do for a long time, part 2. If you haven't watched the first part, go to the last video and watch the part 1. This is part 2. Okay, the next question on our list is, how do you handle subjects like math or science without a formal curriculum? Again, like I said in my last video, we have used curriculum. We do use curriculum. Sometimes we might use curriculum going in the next little bit here. I might bring it back out. I'm debating for Grayson right now if I'm gonna bring some of our Blossom and Root curriculum back. First, I'm gonna start by saying math is something I prioritize, and it is something my kids have to do daily, and it's kind of a non-negotiable for us. So any sort of math, like we just do usually first thing in the morning based on our rhythm, and that can look different for the stage of life we're in. It could be curriculum. Usually the curriculum we use, because we're Canadian, a lot of curriculums are American based, and so we don't use the same math anyway. So it totally depends on the resource. Sometimes it matters, in some grades it matters more what math you're using. But things like a workbook, or maybe it is a curriculum, or maybe it's an online program. There are multiple things to use, and we have and do use a lot of different options. You don't need a formal curriculum to do math, because again, as a Canadian, we can't use any of the math curriculums anyway. Usually math and history, or social studies, what we call it here, we just throw those parts away basically if we're buying American curriculum up here, and insert our own anyway. Obviously our curriculum, when we're using Blossom and Root, does come with like a really good science curriculum. But when we're not using any curriculums, real life application is really important. If you're a intentional teacher, then you can use real life examples woven into every day to teach both math and science, like cooking, baking, gardening, even as far as like more complex math games. You want to sit up here? Help you? When you are an unschooler, everything becomes a lesson, or can become a lesson. So a nature walk, simple things like, instead of just going for a walk in the neighborhood, packing along nature journals or talking about things as you walk, going on like specific hikes or day trips to certain places to learn these things. No, thank you, Mom, because I'm using this. So utilizing hands-on learning, like building something, or again, that nature walk and nature journaling, because you're already going to this place, doing certain projects that really brings these subjects to life. You can really get your kid interested in the topic, and then you can go down rabbit holes or rabbit trails and let them kind of just go. And when you can spark a lead down a rabbit trail, I feel like that can lead to some of the best learning personally. But when given the space, you'll find that kids naturally ask questions and seek answers when they're given the space to do so. So if you are present with your kids in the moment on that nature walk, you're gonna find they're asking questions, and you can kind of help explore that topic. Let's say they ask you a question about earthworms, so you can go into the whole process of like so let's say they're younger, and like, what is the purpose of an earthworm, and then maybe you can get you go down a rabbit trail about like what worms do for the ecosystem, and then maybe you get worms in a worm bin, and and you go down that road. There's so many wonderful explorations, but it requires us as the parent to be really present and ready to take on the role of like learning alongside our kid. But a lot of you guys want to hear like resources. And it's hard because it's different for everybody. There's a million you can Google, and there's going to be a lot of people that are way better at collecting resources than I am. There are a lot of really beautiful, wonderful books for like nature exploration. Maybe I'll go through and show you guys book lists in a different video. Maybe that could be a different thing where I could show you guys some of my favorite books. But again, Blossom and Root, using that as a resource instead of just necessarily a curriculum. I really love Blossom and Root and always have. It hasn't always worked for every season. Like right now, it doesn't work for us, but that doesn't mean I don't love it. The nature anatomy, and there's like nature anatomy, farm anatomy. There's really beautiful watercolor, like artsy books. Those really spark a lot of creativity in my kids. Food anatomy, I think there is. It's a whole thing, and I think I'm not gonna guess what the author's name is. But putting those out, that's a great tool. Putting books out, go to your library, whatever. If you don't have a lot of books at home, we have built up quite a substantial library now. We have lots of open-ended learning books. Again, maybe I'm not gonna remember all these book titles off the top of my head. But setting books out and just like allowing them to explore, like maybe every day you get in the habit of the night before you go to bed, you put 2 or 3 books out on your table, so over breakfast your kids will leaf through the books because they like. And that's what I talked about, utilizing screens and making sure that it's not just running your day. Because if they don't have screens first thing in the morning, then they're gonna be looking for something to do. They need to stimulate their minds. They're like, I'm bored, whatever. So if you have options set out, they will naturally go to those options and start looking through those, and things like that help develop that natural learning and that natural curiosity. Again, there are tons of online sources, lots of units you can get online. There's lots of free resources. Pinterest is great for stuff like that. Every once in a while there's influencers who bundle on like those like, oh, get 150 homeschooling resources for $5 or $10. Like those can be great sometimes just to have on hand. There's so many. The options are endless, and they can be as expensive or as cheap as you'd like. But it's important to remember that kids are natural problem solvers. When they see a reason to learn something, they will learn it. I think I've covered this next question a lot within the last 2 videos, but I'll kind of quickly summarize. But what does learning through life look like in practical terms? And can you give examples of that? So like daily rhythms as learning opportunities is really important. When you have the approach to life that anything can offer a lesson, gardening, meal planning, creating your grocery list, and you can do that with young kids, with them just helping you and you explaining that, you know, everything costs money and this is how much everything, and then you build into that and take them to the store, and it's like, okay, why don't you be in charge of the budget? These are the things we need, and let's calculate as we go. Yeah, it might take a little bit longer, but if you're willing to do that, your kid is going to get so much more learning out of that. And then when they're older and teenagers, well, they can make the meal plan one week, and they can figure out what recipes they need and what they're gonna need, and they're gonna have a budget, and they need to like make everything fit in that budget. Things like that are great learning opportunities. I'm just using the grocery thing as an example, how you can carry it through from young years to older years. And obviously that's not the only parts. Like for example, like we do more formal math. Taking advantage of teaching moments, like having deep conversations about things and not just being like, oh yeah, we'll do that later, or like just not really fully engaging. If you take the time to have deep discussions and actually get curious about your kids' questions, you would be surprised how deep the learning can go from one question. Questions about books and nature and history or current events, those happen naturally if you let them. Then letting your kids dive into projects and things they're interested in, like entrepreneurship. If your kid is like so stoked about that lemonade stand, let them go down that route. Art, whatever it may be, letting them really explore to the fullest their passions and things they're interested in. When they are learning about something they're actually passionate about, that information is going to stick so much better than if they're learning it from a piece of paper. And I mean, you don't need to be told that. You know that. I'm sure the majority of you learn better when you're actually interested in something than you do by just staring at a piece of paper and reading text. passion drives learning, always. And then also just having the freedom to explore. I am the biggest advocate for letting kids be bored. I think boredom is so good for kids. There's a reason, like, I am not anti-tech. You're not gonna see content from me that says anti-screen time, blah, blah, blah. But I'm also not pro let your kids have all the screen time they want because their brains are developing and they don't have the self-control, and screens are addicting. Look at how many of us are addicted to our phones, right? Like, it's just the world we live in. And the reality of the fact that, like, we cannot expect our kids to be able to manage that. It's hard to let your kids be bored because a lot of parents use screens as a crutch, if we're being completely honest. Like, I've done it. I'm not judging you. But when we're used to using it as like, oh, I just need 5 minutes, just turn the screen on. Or, oh my gosh, I turn the screen on so I get like that way I can have my coffee. And yeah, that might be true, but if you left the screens off, I always say it takes about 3 days of like kind of this period of hell to like get to this sweet spot with almost anything. So like potty training for the first 3 days, oh my God. Setting a new bedtime for the first 3 days, geez Louise. A new rhythm, first 3 days, chaos. You know, for the first 3 days of going screen free, let's say you just take out screens in the morning and you don't turn on any screens until noon, and that's your first goal or whatever. Those first 3 days are gonna be tough, and they're mostly gonna be tough for you because suddenly your kid's gonna be like, I'm bored, what are you doing, blah, blah, blah. But letting kids be bored, my kids have come up with the best things when they are bored. The most creative ideas. Multiple, I cannot even count the amount of times my kids have thanked me and shown appreciation for letting them be bored. Like, we've gone through, when we were learning about like how much screen time to allow and stuff like that, we had to do it through trial and error. And there were times where we kind of had to do these like screen detoxes where we just had to like stop being on them for like a week or two and just reset our brains and everything. And their brains needed to be reset because behavior issues would arise, and you know, patience was short, and you know, they fought a lot or something because they were just constantly overstimulated by these screens and these games and whatever it was. And then the first 3 days they'd be like, there's nothing to do, you're the worst for not letting me go on the, you know, just awful. Just sucks the first 3 days of doing anything. But then there's this like sweet spot that you hit where suddenly they're like, oh, I'm gonna go do this, I'm gonna go do this, and you just let them be bored and not solve their problems for them. And suddenly they're like, oh, I forgot how much I love doing this activity. Thanks, Mom. I loved art. I wasn't doing any art. I totally forgot how much I love painting. Yeah. Hey, I built this awesome fort in the yard, and I would have been playing games instead of building this fort. Thank you. They have actually said this to me multiple times since they were about 7 years old. Never underestimate the power of boredom. It's so good for them. Being bored is so good for kids. But life is the best teacher. And when kids live fully and presently, they're always learning. Okay, the next question. Did I lose me? No, there it is. Sorry, I just have my tablet in front of me so I can read the questions. How do you make sure your kids stay motivated to learn without assignments or grades? First, I would like to just offer the question back to you about why you feel it's necessary to only learn through assignments or grades, or like a kid could only be motivated through a check mark or a gold sticker. And this is part of the deschooling process that I think a lot of us have to go through who went through the public school system and who have just been kind of like on the hamster wheel of typical society. We have to jump off of it, and it's hard to jump off of it because we have been programmed. That's not even like going down a woo-woo way or anything. Like, we are programmed as a society to like check off the boxes and get your gold sticker and do that, and like it is the way we've been pumping for a long time. And so to step outside of there is uncomfortable. So reframing how we think about these things is really important to help make sure that we're not blocking our kids. It's a big thing. It's like a lot. It's like, so if you feel that and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling guilt about that. Ooh, a spooky hole. Don't feel guilt about it. Just work on it. What motivates you to learn? Is it getting your gold sticker? Is it getting a check mark beside your work? Or are you motivated to learn because you are actually interested in that subject? Are you motivated to learn because you want to achieve a certain goal that would benefit you in your life? Kids are the same. So as long as you foster that environment, they will be motivated to learn. Trusting in natural curiosity, first of all. Again, I've said this, but kids are wired to learn and explore without being forced. They are literally, their brains are built to do that. You do not have to do anything but get out of their way. That's the biggest thing. We have to get out of their way. Encouraging ownership is another really important factor in this. Sit down with them and goal plan, make a vision board, whatever you want to do. Letting them take ownership of their own goals and seeing the process of, okay, if I get this done and then I do this and then I do this, oh, then I'll be able to buy that bike that I really want. If I shovel sidewalks, then I'll make enough money to maybe be able to buy a whippersnipper, and then I can whippersnip people's yards, and then I'll be able to buy enough, make enough money to maybe buy a lawnmower, and then I can mow people's lawns, and then with that money I can buy my bike. Whatever, that's just an example. But if you set it out and they can, and like let them figure out their own goals and how they can get there, you are teaching them a million wonderful life skills that they will need to carry with them, but it also motivates them to learn, and it gives them something to drive towards. And it's not something you or somebody else set for them, it's something they set for themselves. And in that same breath, having real world purpose to what they're doing is so important. Make it matter, right? Why does it matter if this paper is completed? We're gonna throw this paper out after. We all know we trash the homework after. Who cares about it? We're not gonna frame. Oh, you want more paper? We're not gonna frame that piece of paper and put it on a wall. Like, that's not important. It's a piece of paper. So, writing a letter to a friend far away. That's important. That has value. That is a life skill. Or learning a skill that will help them do XYZ. Like, all of those things are much more motivating. There might be a time where like you guys are really, you're coming from the system maybe, and like you guys, both you and your child or children, just don't know how to live like that yet. And I always just encourage people to just take some time off and just learn how to learn naturally, because it is a skill and we are programmed to not learn that way anymore. So books, projects, field trips, anything that will spark interest at first. And not only at first, like once you learn that way, like continue to do those things 100%. But if you're really struggling and you're like, I don't know where to start with this, start with the things that are interesting and spark excitement, spark joy. Do things that spark joy and just focus on those, and that's okay. They're not gonna not graduate or go to university because you had one weird year. Remember that in public school, a kid can be sick for like the entire year and flunk out and still get pushed ahead to the next grade. You're not doing anything at home that is going to be so detrimental to them in 1 year that you need to take off and relearn how to learn, that it's going to be a make or break deal, right? Okay, next question is, what are some of your favorite resources and tools for unschooling? Okay, so books and read alouds. We do a ton of that. Lots of books, so many books. Library, our own personal library. We love books. Maybe I will do a video where I sit down with some great books that we've loved. Maybe I'll do like a resources. Maybe this can't be answered here. Maybe I need to do like a resources video where I just show you like games and art supplies and science kits and blah, 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 blah that we have loved and used. Not that we have all the pieces to everything now, but yeah, things like that. Documentaries and podcasts are things we can talk about right now. If you have little ones, I love... There's some great podcasts for like young ones, like Sparkle Stories and stuff, to get those rhythms in and get that like love of storytelling in. There's great podcasts that talk about like world history, like What in the World, and oh my gosh, we have so many. We're a big podcast family, and the kids, the reason they get a device at all when they're not younger, but when they're like, you know, around 9-ish in our family is so I can load that thing up with podcasts that we approve of and things like that for them to just listen to in their own time, so that the learning doesn't have to stop when I stop. But documentaries, Disney Plus has a ton of documentaries. YouTube is full of amazing short films and documentaries. That's the amazing thing about YouTube, is you can look up a documentary or resources for almost anything you want to learn. It is amazing. Obviously screen first, because you never know what you're going to get on YouTube sometimes, but it is chock full of amazing things. Even like sometimes I'll throw in an episode of Magic School Bus, and my entire family, from like me, the adult, love that. The toddler loves it. And the 14-year-old is like, yeah, Magic School Bus. Why not? Local and online communities is really important. We have a really wonderful local homeschool community here. We have lots of different options for that. There's a lot in the closest city to us too, if we want to go for a little bit of a drive. Even like online resources, like get involved in your community is such a wonderful resource. When I am too busy to do like some things, I can sign my kids up for classes. I know those are there. Or we can join a field trip that's happening for homeschoolers. The community out there now, homeschooling has changed so much. It is a very social thing. And meeting like-minded families really can expand your learning opportunities and just joining your local community. So I guess I just want to leave you for this question that you don't need rigid curriculum. You just need the right tools to spark curiosity in your child. Next question is, how do you navigate subjects that your kids need but aren't naturally drawn to? Okay, I guess this question is a little bit relative. There's going to be some people that are just like, no subject is needed. Now, I don't necessarily, I understand that camp and my heart kind of sits there, but I also know that like, I want to set my kids up for, if they do want to go to university or something like that, they have the foundational skills to do those things. Connecting boring subjects to what they're actually interested in is quite easy to do, and you can do that quite naturally. So like, if they hate math, very easy to put math into real world things to make them realize, oh, I'm doing math right now. Oh, math isn't so bad. Okay. Things like that make a huge difference. And doing low pressure exposure. So casual resources and casual introductions, I guess. So like books and discussions and hands-on interest-based things, board games. Maybe it's a class that they're gonna join. Maybe it's working on building something out of wood or whatever it is to like teach that thing to get them in their foot in the door. And then it never has to look like worksheets on the table. That's only if you want it to. But forced lessons, that point is never going to stick to a kid who's not interested in them if you're pushing it. But also you need to lead by example. I think it's really important for them to see you learning, modeling lifelong learning, and you exploring things that you're interested in. Sorry, my house just got loud. That encourages them to engage in their own interests. Now, one of the biggest things that you need to remember is to trust the process, and that is easier said than done. But I look back at my old self who was like, oh my God, can I trust the process? That's really hard. Yes, you can trust the process, because the gaps will naturally fill when your kids see a need for certain things. Am I allowed to use, can I use you as an example for this question here? For example, my oldest daughter, Mackenzie, she is 14 now and working on high school credits and stuff. Here she is.
I'm old as dirt.
Old as dirt. So she was not naturally into a lot of like some subjects. Like math was really dry for her. It still is, but but she understands that she needs it for some things now. And now what she's pursuing in her, like the idea she has for herself for what she wants to do when she gets older. And now she's realizing, okay, maybe I do want to go to university. And so there's a certain set of requirements that need to be met for her to be able to go do that now. And so now she's realizing the importance of doing those subjects. And so now it's not necessarily that she suddenly loves math, but she's getting the math done to get her goal met. And that is part of trusting the process that's really important. Because if I would have not trusted the process, I would have been like, oh my God, this kid is never going to do math. She hates it. How are we going to make her be able to graduate and all this kind of stuff? But if I just trusted the process, she was going to get there, because she eventually found something that she wanted to do passionately enough that now she's doing the work to get there. Does that make sense? So really, really trust the process. And just trusting that if something truly matters, your kid is going to find a way to make it happen and to learn it. But when the time is right for them, it might not be right now when the time is right for you. This is always a big one. It's not my favorite question to answer, because I feel like this question is honestly just boring. No offense to the person who asked this, but like, what's your perspective on socialization as unschoolers, and how do you find community? That is a better question. It's like, community is different than like, do you just sit at home all day? We are more homebodies, so the answer some days might be yes, absolutely, we do that. But homeschooling does not equal not socialized. I don't know about you, but I've always taught my children that, now I have a kid that's a really big social butterfly, and I have a kid that is not a social butterfly at all, very, very introverted. And that's just their personality. Both of those children were homeschooled the entire time and have been homeschooled the entire time. They're just different people. We can't force introverts to be extroverts. Like, you can try, but you're just going to exhaust that kid and deplete them and make them miserable. And you can't force an extrovert to be introverted all the time. Same thing. But I've always taught my kids that meaningful relationships matter way more than the quantity of people you're friends with. I also have found that homeschoolers tend to be friends with a much wider variety of people. My kids don't feel the need to stick within their exact age group to find friends. So anyway, redefining socialization and what it is, and how you actually are social. I don't think throwing a child in a box of a bunch of other children their age and just being like, that's socialization. No, like bullying and like all of that, that's not socialization. I define socialization by being social, being an active part of the community of people. So if you can get opportunities to be an active part of the community of people, then you're socializing. So for us, that's utilizing our homeschool community and other community, not necessarily just our homeschool community either. There's a lot of events that happen in and around our area where our kids can join in and be part of it. But the blessing about being homeschoolers is all the other kids are in public school. Our kids can participate in stuff and be maybe they're sitting in on a knitting group full of old ladies, and it's great. Or maybe it's a big group of fellow homeschoolers, but the age ranges are mixed, and they have some kids their age and some kids like all over the board. There's just a lot more opportunity for really genuine socialization and skill building. Also, finding like-minded families is really important. Some people that you can kind of do life school with. If you have the opportunity to go out into your community and make friends, just remember that you don't need to be the exact same homeschoolers to be friends with somebody. Your values don't all have to be the same. If you go into friendships, and you guys can be school friends. You can be friends for the sake of your kids hanging out. You know what I mean? Like, that can be it. It doesn't have to be any deeper than that if you don't want it to be. But we can't shut ourselves off to those friendships either. I've seen a lot of moms accidentally make their kids lonelier by not putting themselves out there enough to make some connections and involve their kids in the community because they are too uncomfortable or they are too shy. So we do have to be careful of that. But following their interests, like this entire video, I've talked about clubs, classes, hobbies, groups of all sorts of kinds. Get involved in those. That's a huge, huge social aspect. Natural friendships come out of those situations. Like my oldest, she has friends that are in public school and homeschool. She's not just, both of my kids do. They're not just latched onto the homeschool community or just the public school community. They have friends from all walks of life, and it's a beautiful thing. Unschooling, it's really important to understand, unschooling does not mean isolation, or it shouldn't. If you are doing it intentionally and making sure you're offering opportunities for your kids, I find it actually leads to deeper, more meaningful social interactions than it would be if they were just like plunked in a room full of kids just because they are the same age, you know? What's the biggest challenge about homeschooling multiple kids, and how do you work through it? Okay, that's the biggest challenge is on obviously like balancing different needs. It is hard to have the needs of a toddler and a baby, and then I have, again, so if you didn't watch the first video, I have a 8-month-old baby, and I have a 2-year-old, and then I have a 5th grader and a 9th grader. So that's a lot, and it is challenging because different ages need different things. Fostering independence helps a lot though. Letting those big kids really start to learn independence in a good way, in a way that makes them feel good, so they can go off and you can set them up and they can go off and do their big kid stuff with maybe minimal intervention from you, while you can address the needs of your younger ones. Group learning is great if you guys have the age range to do that. We've never really had a lot of, like, maybe we're kind of going back into group learning a little bit more, but there was a period where group learning didn't really work for us because my oldest kids are they're 3.5 years apart. So some stuff is doable with group learning. That's not always the case, but if it can work for you, that can be really helpful. But also one-on-one time. I know this kind of is more of a parenting thing, but I think spending one-on-one time with each of my kids is really, really important. The little ones, it's easier to do that because like the baby naps and maybe the big kids are playing, and then I get time with my 2-year-old, for example. But I make really intentional dates with my big kids. I commit to at least once a month. We pick what we want to do, and we get snacks or do whatever, and we have a date. I have a date with each of my big kids, and that makes them feel really special and helps balance. I think like it's like that family rhythm. Life and school go hand in hand. So if your life is balanced, your school will feel more balanced. Embracing the chaos is a big thing though. Like sometimes it's just gonna be a little bit chaotic, and you just gotta embrace it and roll with it. But like you'll hear me say 300,000 times, having a strong rhythm helps everything flow, and then it doesn't feel quite so chaotic. At least the chaos stays in a boundary. I'm trusting that each child is going to learn on their own pace and can learn on their own pace, as long as I am being intentional and present. Keeping a strong family rhythm and just letting go of control on everything has really helped me balance all of these age gaps and schooling on all these different levels. Okay, I did get some questions about like how like state requirements and stuff, and I'm just going to assume that these people don't know that I am Canadian, and so it works a little bit different. So I'm in Alberta. Homeschooling laws are different. We can do something called parent-led schooling, which is unschooling falls under there. We don't have to follow the curriculum. We also get like compensated for homeschooling here, and like a little bit to help go towards resources, which is really nice in Alberta. But we don't have to like meet certain legal requirements. We have a homeschool facilitator who does a visit with us 2 times a year at least, and she is at arm's reach to reach out to whenever we need help with anything. Oh my goodness, we love her. We have used her for resources so many times. If I'm like, hey, I'm really stuck on social studies, I don't know what to use, my kid hates this one, we don't feel like this one fits us, what should I be using? Homeschool facilitator is amazing for that. So our kids like gather work that they're doing, and they show her different things that they've been working on, and she basically does all of the legal requirement stuff for us, submits to the government that we are meeting learning requirements. She checks in on us, and she's actually become a really sweet friend. Yeah, we have a facilitator, and I know that not everywhere it's the same, so unfortunately I feel like I can't really answer that question to probably the way you were meaning. But I know a lot of unschoolers from all over the world, it's really quite easy to meet the requirements needed because they're still learning the same things, just in a more natural way than pen to paper. Okay, last question, and then I'm gonna have to go get my baby up from his nap maybe, or he might be awake. He's having a long nap. Okay, what advice would you give moms who are nervous about homeschooling? That one is so loaded. De-school yourself first. De-school yourself from what you think is right about learning. Everything you know about school, if you've been in the public system, throw it out the window and be willing to be curious. Keep your own curiosity really open. Start small. Dip your toe into one thing at a time with one subject, or like a relaxed summer of learning. Just follow your kid's natural curiosity and go from there. Like, you don't have to do it all right now. That is a big, big thing. Don't think you have to match somebody's 10 plus years of homeschooling in your year 1. We never did that when we were in year 1. You do not have to do that. Start small. Again, trust that process. Kids are always learning, even when it doesn't look like the school that you think it should look like. Lean into connections, a strong family foundation, a strong parent-child connection truly is the foundation for successful homeschooling and unschooling, or whatever kind of schooling you want to do. You guys have to be connected. So focus on that, getting those foundations in place. And then I would also say, give yourself permission to let go. Give yourself permission to just let go of the control. You don't need to control the process. You don't need to control everything. Know that I'm speaking to a past version of myself, for sure, and sometimes the current version of myself as well. Being able to shed school-based expectations will set you free. Homeschooling, and specifically unschooling, is about freedom, not perfection. You are allowed to trust yourself, and you are allowed to trust your kids, and that makes all the difference. Okay, I think my baby is starting to stir, so that's all we're gonna do. This is very long. I hope I answered enough questions for you guys. I hope this was informative, and we'll be back to our regular programming when I don't look like this anymore and I don't feel like the poo-poos. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any more questions or you want to see that resource vlog or something like that. Maybe I'll do something in the future coming up here. But thank you for listening to this whole thing, and I hope this was helpful for you homeschoolers out there. I want to encourage you that you guys are doing a wonderful job, and just being down this path means that you care a lot. So give yourself a lot of grace. See you in my next one, guys. Bye.